Hello and welcome everyone, it is me, the Lover, also known as the Power to Do, back for you with another episode of Morphtronics Master Duel Ranked. And I've got a couple replays today for you guys. We're starting off with a real funny something that is near and dear to my heart. It is Cash Tira players taking massive L's. We're seeing my opponent lead with a Pot of Desires here, and Cash Tira seems to have done what Cash Tira does best in Master Duel, and that is brick. The deck already was like infamously bricky in the TCG when, you know, we had every consistency piece at, you know, 3 copies available to us. But in Master Duel with all the consistency hits, not doing too hot. I do decide to cop by the Ash Blossom here because I do want to get Redox into rotation, but yeah, I'm punished, I guess. Hit with a Maxx here. This chain link already is like probably you know, scary Master Duel screenshots material. I think a lot of you guys probably also ran into similar stuff. You know, you caught by a hand trap and then, you know, there it is, the bug hits the board. Ogre, you know, it hits a card from the top of my deck. I think my opponent goes for the south one here, if not completely mistaken. Yes, that is the case. As I, you know, stick the Gadget Gamer here on the board. Telephone and Hauler hit the field. Telephone tries to resummon the remote that I pitched earlier for the Reacton, and once I am in a position where I could be threatening a Baron de Fleur, my opponent has the Nibiru in hand, but luckily I still have a triple attack, and that draws me to an insane set of cards here. The droplet is, you know, just nice to have, but, you know, finding that Telephone here to turn the Repay unit live is, of course, absolutely impressive. From here on, you see me go into an Orsa, which, if there's like one good thing I can say about Maxx, is that it is very nice to consistently have a target to summon off of Orsa. There's not a whole lot of other positives to that card. And with that, I turn, you know, all 3 guys into an Apollosa here to, you know, insulate me from any further hand traps my opponent might be drawing into. Since Cash Tira is a very staple heavy deck, you know, the lines from here on out aren't the fanciest. You see me go for Telephone a lot, but with the Redox still on Grave, I do have another good bit of extension in me, since I can go through an Excelsior Cross Stardust and a, you know, Power to a Braver Dragon later down the line. My opponent goes for a Cash Prep, chains the tier Cash. Personally, I don't hate any of this, realistically. If my opponent wants to mill with the tier Cash, go ahead. If my opponent wants to mill me with a tier Cash, so what? Unicorn hitting the board, though, is a bit annoying. Unicorn's not necessarily the greatest of cards. As Power to a Braver Dragon makes its first appearance in this episode, I can't have one of these without him showing up after all. Opponent goes to Unicorn, but I personally don't want a filthy Cash player touching my extra deck, so I negate that with an Apollosa. As, you know, Telephone goes to do its thing again. Looking at deck count, my good sir, you are getting awfully low on cards in deck there. And with, you know, 4 cards left, I do see an angle for quite the funny. And I think a lot of you know what I'm talking about by now, as I turn a Linkuriboh and a Telephone into an SP Little Knight. Using the 1 Telephone that is left on the board here for, you know, another Telephone, as I go Linkuriboh with 1 card left in deck. And what better way to end this off than the classic jump scare, as I turn, you know, 5 monsters on the field into an Underworld Goddess of the Closed World, decking my opponent out of Maxx. Mainly just here for the fun of it. This was like kind of just cool to play out, because, you know, while this deck does have like a decent win con and, you know, decking an opponent out if you get Maxx, it doesn't happen always, because, you know, you always have that problem that your opponent is drawing into further disruption, and you really need to, you know, have the right pieces in a lot of cases. But it worked out, so, you know, I felt like maybe including this one to have one of these cemented on the channel would be kind of cool. But that, we move into a or not. But yeah, with that, we move into another game, a great back and forth that I did enjoy a whole lot. And with that, we are locked and loaded on that second replay. My opponent has elected to go second. Or rather, my opponent is going second. I think I won that coin toss. As I go for, you know, Telephone, gain a couple life points, converted that Telephone into a cell phone. Name a more iconic duo. I'll wait. Which is like, as much as I can give, you know, Telephone this like stepchild approach, it is very nice to finally have like a reveal of a Southpawn that does have a great amount of impact, because you can, you know, Southpawn, reveal the Telephone, link off the Southpawn, Telephone brings back the Southpawn again. And suddenly off of one guy you are, you know, in a position where you have 3 bodies worth of material. Potentially if the Southpawn hits again, you're on 4 bodies, which could, you know, threaten something important like an Apollosa, or potentially if you were playing it, an Access Code Talker. Hitting a remote of the Southpawn, which I'm a huge fan of. I do commit into Morphtronic Earphone here, because I'm kind of thinking, do I net beast or do I not? I will come to regret my decision very fast, as I special summon a smartphone here, revealing once again, just mainly digging for follow-up, because there's not a whole lot of extension I could reveal, outside of like specifically repair unit at this point. As I turn Earphone and Smartphone into an SP Little Knight, setting the Corp by the Grave and passing turn. Why would I come to regret my decision not to make Naturia Beast? Well, my opponent starts activating Sky Striker cards, and oh my god, Nat Beast would have won me this game. Well, fires off a Widow Anchor, a Shark Cannon, I believe, was the second one. No, a Jamming Waves, and a Hornet Drones in quick succession. Goes for the Hayate off of the dump ray is not great. I was like, okay, opponent dumps the dumps engage here, tries to add back engage of Kagari, and I can, you know, negate the engage. But sadly, my opponent already had the engage in hand. And even if, you know, it's nice to at least negate 1/1, engage is still a +1 at like a point in the game. It's absolutely crazy, especially as someone who started playing back in the day when this deck was still, you know, the meta threat that I think many people still kind of remember it for very fondly. It is crazy that piece of cardboard is like at 3 again, and it is doing absolutely nothing outside of like stints of playability as like an engine. My opponent, you know, linking through the different Maxx suits, kind of going through Kaina, going into Zeke. And then we see another ancient Sky Striker tech. I think I've not seen Avarice in a Sky Striker list since 2019. Goes to Shark Cannon, the Link Koribo here in the end phase. Gets to multi-roll for the Widow Anchor again, sets 2, and is able to grab another Widow Anchor for the follow-up off of this Shizuku. Not a whole lot of options that I do have here. The Forbidden Droplet draw is very nice. That's going to come in very clutch as I get Widow Anchored on the Telephone activation, because now I can Droplet the Telephone, drop down the Shizuku, and kind of get my stats back up to where they should have been. And also, you know, of course, resolve the Telephone and showcase a very silly interaction. That's the same Telephone that activated on the field. But my opponent has the Forbidden Droplet for that Telephone, so, you know, sleek shuffling around of a card that maybe should have excluded itself. Doesn't really get me anywhere. Go to combat, kind of thinking, do I crash the Orsa here? But I feel like I don't want to take more damage on the follow-up, especially with, you know, a Sky Striker with linkage in the mix. Sky Striker is a deck that can surprisingly quickly amass like a good bit of damage. As my opponent goes to Dark Hole here, I'm kind of considering if I SP here to retain like at least SP on the Telephone. Possibly a misplay. I think it both ways are defensible. Either you force out the Widow Anchor in hand that my opponent has, or you just, you know, lose the SP regularly. I feel like it rarely matters, because in the end phase, you know, my opponent could have just reset the Widow Anchor off of the multi-roll. Anyways, I grab Reactant off of Orsa, which is something that, in hindsight, that's probably like the one thing where I'm not like, maybe that should have been something else. Although this Reactant is going to come in very clutch at a point later in this game, but I think a Smartphone would have probably been a much better pick and a lot more gas in a situation where I do have like a bit of room to make a push. And not just lose to one disruption, as I get, you know, Widow Anchored on the Remoten, trying to get, you know, this Reactant live. Opponent sticks Ray and Rose, goes into Kagari, you know, seen this before, you know, Kagari add back Skystrike. Well, not engage in this case. Probably just wants to retain a Widow Anchor for the follow-up as my opponent punches me 15-22. And then in main 2 has to turn these two into, you know, Zeke, into another Shizuku. Or, you know, in this case, an SP Little Knight. Which is why this reactant does come in rather clutch, as that is the biggest normal summon that my main deck runs. Or the current main deck runs. Opponent has a set Shock Cannon and a Widow Anchor, which, you know, we kind of know about because of the add-backs. I go into combat, force out the Widow Anchor here. Opponent is forced to take the reactant, which, you know, in turn does, luckily enough, turn off the Shock Cannon, so I can, you know, reap a unit for the South one here. As my opponent goes for the SP Little Knight. Hoping that South one does hit something good here. Not quite sure what I do reveal here. Remoten is a pretty good one, but Telephone is a really crazy one. A lot of potential in that as my opponent goes to Shock Cannon. Does, you know, take me off of like the completely ridiculous route here. As, you know, my one Telephone Engrave does get summoned by the Shock Cannon to my opponent's field. But I can still put a Remoten on the board, banish a Smartphone for a Smartphone. Really one of my favorite moves. As I turn these two into an IP Masquerader. From here on out, I put the Smartphone on the board and kind of say, hey, you know, maybe we need something big here. There's a good bunch of reveals that are pretty huge, and Smartphone is a pretty good one, as that, you know, immediately puts itself on the board and does threaten like a bigger Link monster, which is quite nice. Do go for the Smartphone here, banishing the Earphone, by the way. Unheard of, but at this point I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm not really going into a Net Beast anyways. Might as well banish that instead of, you know, any of the other names that I had in the grave at that time, because I don't want to get rid of the Southern and the Telephone here. Turning the IP and the couple of guys into an Underworld Goddess, as well as my opponent's SP, which in hindsight is not the greatest of plays, but I just was out of like real options in terms of links. The only link I have left here is an Apollosa. And I just didn't find, you know, the non-tuner access to really get into the synchro plays that I usually want to be making. Goes for one of the new Sky Striker cards, one that I don't think you even commonly run in that deck, but maybe one of you guys, if you have like more experience with Sky Strikers, can correct me on that in the comments. But I think the manga cards rarely see play. As my opponent does fire, you know, both of their back row here to get a token to their side of the field and steal the Underworld Goddess, which will very quickly steal this game off for my opponent. Nonetheless, this was a lot of fun. I'm just, you know, seeing the back and forth, you know, a lot of, you know, pushes, counter pushes, and the counter pushes. But at a certain point, you just do realize, you know, I'm playing a combo deck that's, you know, barely holding on, and my opponent is, you know, very easily able to retain value just a lot better than I am. Still, very fun duel regardless. I did thoroughly enjoy this one. So yeah, with that, let's move into a last one that maybe showcases a very funny interaction that probably not a lot of you guys ran into, but that really made me chuckle once I, you know, experienced it for the first time. And with that, we are loaded in. Opponent is going first, and my opponent leads with a copy of Dark Lord Contact for Nurse Reficure. Well, interesting. Misses the Cup of Ace, which I think already kind of dictates where this is going, but I did want to include this for a certain interaction. After that, we are probably to speed this one up, as this is a Nurse Burn game that has more than 2 turns, which, you know, probably not winning that game then. Normal Summon Gadget Gamer here gets me a cell phone because, you know, I already have the rest of the boys in hand. Put this telephone on the board, use the Gadget Gamer effect. Pitch the cell phone off of the Gadget Hauler, and this is where I'm like, wait a minute. There was no summon. Goes to check the telephone text again, and it is a then you can. Which was kind of funny, seeing how just like randomly, you know, a bad reaction to some Mochi, and I guess also Nurse Reficule I just kind of shut down like the telephone loop. Kind of, you know, these are like the interactions that like really make Yu-Gi-Oh players say, "Oh damn, yeah, this game really is complicated." But yeah, because it's then you can, and you know, you have to gain the life points to also summon. No summons there. But from here on out, I think, you know, with a gift card spend, that didn't kill me. Even with, you know, me burning myself for 700 in the process, you can already tell there's not a whole lot of steam left on my opponent. And I'm just kind of, you know, fixing my way to game here as I turn Remoten and Redox into a Baron de Fleur. May she rest in peace. But oftentimes, I think, yeah, it's in the long term probably for the better that she's gone, because she does kind of streamline the process of making 10 Synchros. Putting, you know, a Remoten and a Redox at the end here into Bestial Dispater, something I have been experimenting with, but in Master Duel, just because Baron is legal, he just doesn't come up quite a lot, but maybe more on that deck profile at the end here. But yeah, wanted to include this one just because I thought the interaction between, you know, bad reaction to Samochi and Telephone was kind of funny. But with that, let's take a look at the deck list that I used and wrap this one up. And with that, we have the deck in front of us that I used. Main deck mainly unchanged. I think last time I already talked about putting in triple text for the cash package. One Fenrir, one Ogre just doesn't feel as good as like maybe Fenrir would. Not really mind the change, but I also think like Fenrir is like kind of fine as is. Even if it is an incredibly powerful card, I do have to admit that. Otherwise, yeah, as kind of teased in the last replay, I've been kind of experimenting with Bestial Dispater. But aside from the fact that it's a bit awkward to make, even if you can make them off of like an Exile Synchro Stardust and potentially also the Redox that I am playing. In Master Duel, you have like very fierce competition, which is like the main problem, I feel like. In the TCG, I think this might not be as much of an issue. I need to kind of take count of like how often I go into a Synchro 10 off of Redox or like Exile Synchro Stardust specifically. But at the moment, it's not happened a whole lot. And even the Exile Synchro Stardust, I think, doesn't work because it has to be both non-tuner dragons. So yeah, it's basically just Redox. It would work with the Exile Synchro Stardust if I was playing a Formula Synchron, so that's maybe something I probably am gonna experiment with. But at the moment, this Dispater just doesn't really has had a lot of opportunities to shine. Aside from the fact that, you know, no real targets for the first effect, which is usually one of the cool parts about this Dispater. You can make him as a 10, he extends, you make another 10, and you still have, you know, a very solid piece of interaction in the form of like a pop or like a monster negate, which can of course be kind of cool. But I'll see that maybe after like another week or two of playing this list. But at the moment, you know, probably due for a cut. Otherwise, yeah, let me know if, you know, maybe that interaction with bad reaction to Samochi got a small chuckle out of you as well. But with all that out of the way, I will be thanking you guys very much for watching. Just as always, it is insane to kind of see that, you know, you guys still regularly tune in. Even if my upload schedule isn't the greatest. But yeah, huge thanks for that. But with all that out of the way, I will be seeing you guys again next time. But until then, goodbye.